It's Nonfiction November, and I wanted to share with you some books for fiction readers that are nonfiction. So, if you just want to dip your toes into nonfiction but you don't know where to start, I wanted to share with you some titles. Now, for my nonfiction read, I am doing The Man from the Train, the solving of a century-old serial killer mystery. Probably not the first place I would send you if you're just getting started with nonfiction. But I heard about The Man from the Train in a series of books, podcasts, and TV shows called Lore by Aaron Mahnke. And that would be a great place to start. So if you love paranormal, supernatural, if you read a lot of books about vampires, werewolves, cryptids, then you could start with the books, you could start with the podcast, or you could start with the shows to just get you started with nonfiction. My next suggestion is The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. And this would be for people who like books by Kristen Hanna, books about strong women. So The Five is the untold lives of the women killed by Jack the Ripper. And what the author does here is she does not focus on the murderer. She focuses on the women that he killed. And we've always been told that these women were prostitutes and they were out on the streets. And she really dives deep into their stories and looks at life in Victorian London. If you watched the Christmas Carol and saw Ebenezer Scrooge say, "Aren't there workhouses? Are there no prisons?" She talks about the workhouses and the prisons and how some of these women would rather sleep in a doorway with a serial killer on the loose than go to these workhouses and prisons. So this was one of the best, well-researched books that I've ever read. So if you've followed me on the blog at all, you will have seen my post about Douglas Preston's newest book that has come out, The Lost Tomb, and he is one of my favorites. I've not read a lot of his fiction books, but if you have, you need to read his nonfiction too. The Lost City of the Monkey God is fascinating, and it is a story about a lost city that they found in the Honduran wilderness, and Douglas Preston goes on an adventure much like Indiana Jones and goes to discover what this lost city is all about and why it was lost for so long. And it's totally isolated jungle environment, so if you like survivor shows, you might want to pick this one up. I am all about a niche rabbit hole, and when I found the book The Feather Thief by Kirk Wallace Johnson, what could be more niche than a story about a young man who breaks into a museum to steal bird feathers for the black market fly fishing industry? If you like a good heist story, or if you just want to read something totally out of the norm, then The Feather Thief is absolutely fascinating. I loved every minute of it. The thing about some of these true crime stories like The Feather Thief is that everything doesn't get tied up neatly in a bow at the end. And the same is true for this story, The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit by Michael Finkel. This is a story about a man who just walked away from everything one day. He just drove his car as far as he could go. When it stopped, ran out of gas, he got out and went into the woods and lived there for 27 years, stealing from local summer cabins and camps until he was finally caught. It reminded me of the book by Jean Craig, George, My Side of the Mountain, where the boy's like, "Oh, I'm just going to go live in the woods and see what happens." Except we're really not sure about what his motives were and why he decided to do this. So if you're interested in missing person stories or wilderness adventure stories, you might want to read The Stranger in the Woods. Now, Finkel does doggedly chase down the story, and he has been criticized for that because this man just wants to be left alone. And there are a lot of questions that are you're still going to be asking yourself at the end of this book. But it is interesting to think about why somebody would want to just walk away from everything. And the last book that I want to recommend to you is The Soul of an Octopus, A Surprising Exploration into the World of Consciousness by Cy Montgomery. And Cy Montgomery, I really love her writing. She writes nonfiction books for children. She wrote a book that I enjoy called The Good Good Pig. And then she wrote this octopus book. So if you enjoy The Octopus Teacher, the show, if you have read Remarkably Bright Creatures, if your FYP is full of animal videos, then you should read The Soul of an Octopus, because it is a very touching story of her relationship with this octopus, getting to know this octopus and the emotions that they both have. And it may make you cry. So those are my nonfiction reads that I suggest if you were a fiction reader, and I hope that you try one of these.